home, spectacular goals, sensational superstars, glorious victory, agonizing defeat. It's win or go home time at the World Cup. Hello, I'm Arnold Naidu, and this is The Heat. Before it kicked off last month, there was a lot of concern and skepticism about the World Cup. Would Brazil be ready? Questions about the stadiums, fears about street protests. But so far, this World Cup is turning out to be one of the best of all time. Superstars Messi, Neymar and Robben have thrilled fans and TV audiences around the globe. Favorites Brazil and Germany are still alive. And so are smaller nations like Costa Rica and Belgium. Who will win it all? Joining me now from Rio de Janeiro is CCTV's Joel Richards. Joel, it's now down to 8 teams. As I mentioned, there were a lot of concerns before the tournament began. How's it all going?
Well, good morning from Rio, and as you said, there were many concerns before this tournament, and particularly just a year ago, there were millions of people on the streets protesting about this World Cup, seeing that the money should be going for much more public spending, hospitals and schools and the like. What we're seeing now is that there's a question of the protests about the protests. On Tuesday in Sao Paulo, there was tear gas and rubber bullets fired on about 300 protesters who wanted, from their comrades, if you like, to be released from jail. So there is still quite some tension on, but nonetheless, what we've seen is that the protests are really people in the hundreds rather than in the millions that we saw last year.
Right, we have been looking at these great pictures that have been coming out of Brazil of fans having a great time on the streets. How are they getting on with each other?
Well, it's when you look at the setting, we're here just on Copacabana, and we've been based in Rio for the whole duration, and it's a stunning setting for this World Cup. When you have a look at just the obviously all the fantastic stadium and the atmosphere is absolutely spectacular. Down at the fan park, just a couple of miles down from us, every single day there have been tens of thousands of people there, obviously very much enjoying this World Cup. It's been a sensational World Cup so far in terms of entertainment and, of course, lots of controversy. So great atmosphere, it has to be said, for this World Cup.
Right, one of the big concerns that a lot of people had before the tournament started, in fact, in the planning stages and in the building stages, one of the concerns was that Brazil has a very high crime rate, especially in the big cities like Rio, where you are right now, and in the other big commercial capital, Sao Paulo. What is security like?
It's something that really stands out for people like ourselves who've travelled here to cover this World Cup, and for many tourists as well. Just the other day we were leaving a training session held by the Dutch national team, and we were stuck in traffic behind 2 huge vans full of army officers, and our driver was saying that this is something that you never really see normally, only during this World Cup. The expenditure has been absolutely astronomical, in the region of $900 million, far more than there was spent for the World Cup in South Africa in 2010, but this very much feeds into the narrative of security at major sporting events like this, dating back to 1972 when there were the 11 Israeli athletes killed at the Olympic Games. Every single major tournament there's been greater security, and here for every single official event, whether it's at the fan park or at stadiums, the streets are lined with police and with military officials, and so there's a very strong sense that obviously they're making sure that they don't want any incidents whatsoever.
Right, and it is the most watched event in the world. Let's get to the action on the field, Joel. Brazil are the favourites. Will they go all the way, or are there still some anxieties about their performance so far?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? There's so much pressure on Brazil as the hosts, 5 times world champions, and of course the last time they held the World Cup here in 1950, they famously lost that final to Uruguay. There is the feeling that that history will help them through, but at the same time this is nowhere near such a talented Brazil squad as we've been used to seeing in recent years. They're very dependent on the striker Neymar. There are fears about the psychological and the emotional state of the players, to the extent that the coach Luis Scolari has brought in a psychologist, and of course they're also up against Colombia in this quarter-final on Friday, one of the best performers of this tournament so far. So it's certainly going to be very difficult, but the feeling in Brazil is there's still optimism, there's still hope that they will at least reach the final.
And there has been unprecedented interest right here in the United States over the performance by Team USA. Big disappointment Lots of heartbreak when they lost out to Belgium and they on their way back home. We know that tens of thousands of US fans made it to Brazil. Are they now all on their way back as well, or are they staying on?
Well, we've been speaking to many of the visiting supporters, and many have said that they're obviously combining something of a holiday, but many of them weren't expecting to be here in Brazil for quite so long, with interest in the side. They had such a difficult group, along with the likes of Germany and Portugal, so to have qualified in itself is obviously a real achievement. But also Jurgen Klinsmann, the national team coach, he got his players to book their flights for the 14th of July, so he was obviously suggesting that they could make it the whole way and reach the final. A huge ask, of course, and a brave performance against Belgium, but nonetheless very positive for the United States, it has to be said, and it does seem that it's really woken up a massive amount of interest back home, and obviously to the extent where they may even look into qualifying, I should say, putting forward their candidacy for the 2026 World Cup.
Thanks, Joel. CCTV's Joel Richards there talking to us from Rio de Janeiro.